My daughter threw me out of her wedding for being embarrassing, then demanded my 40 acres. She had no idea I'd already given it all away. By the time they realized what I'd done, FBI was already watching. I'm Julian Moore, and for 40 years, I built foundations. Concrete ones, mostly. Houses, office buildings, shopping centers across 3 counties. Started with nothing but calloused hands and immigrant grandfather's work ethic. Built my construction business brick by brick, saved every penny, bought land piece by piece until I owned 40 acres of prime real estate worth $5.2 million. My wife Sarah always said I was building something bigger than buildings. She was right. This story has more foundations than a skyscraper, and every single one is about to shift. If you're listening from a small town where developers circle like vultures, hit subscribe. You'll recognize these players. Drop your city in the comments. I bet you've seen corruption like this in your hometown too. 3 days after Victoria kicked me out of her wedding, she called about the land. The wedding was supposed to be perfect. $95,000 perfect. 200 guests at the Riverside Country Club. Victoria had planned every detail for 18 months, except how to handle her blue-collar father. "Dad, you can't wear that suit," she said, eyeing my navy blue off-the-rack jacket, the one I wore to Sarah's funeral 4 years ago. "Derek's family will be there. His father runs Bennett and Associates law firm." Derek Bennett, 36 years old, real estate developer, drives a silver Porsche, wears shoes that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Everything I wasn't. "This suit was good enough for your mother's funeral," I said quietly. Victoria's face went cold. "That was different. This is my wedding." The ceremony went smoothly until the reception. I was sitting at table 12, not the family table, mind you, when Derek's father started holding court about property values and development opportunities. Natural conversation for their crowd. "Julian here owns some beautiful acreage," Derek announced to the table. 40 acres just outside town. Perfect for our next project. I felt every eye turn to me. "Not for sale," I said simply. Derek's father, Richard Bennett, leaned forward. "Everything's for sale at the right price, Julian. Smart money's moving into this area." "Smart money can move somewhere else." The table went quiet. Victoria appeared beside me like smoke. "Dad, can I speak with you privately?" Outside the reception hall, she let me have it. "You embarrassed me in front of Derek's family. His father was being polite, and you were rude." I was honest. "You were stubborn. Do you know what Derek's family thinks of you? What they think of me now?" I looked at my daughter, beautiful in her white dress, furious at the man who raised her. "What do you think of me, Victoria?" "Right now? You're embarrassing. You're holding on to that land like some kind of hoarder when you could sell it and live comfortably. Derek says developers are offering top dollar for property like yours." "Derek says a lot of things." "Get out," she whispered. "Just go home. I'll call you later." I drove home in my 15-year-old pickup truck, past manicured lawns and pristine sidewalks, thinking about foundations. The strong ones stay hidden underground. The weak ones crack under pressure. 3 days later, she called about the land. "Dad, we need to talk about your future." Victoria's voice carried that patronizing tone she'd perfected in her marketing career. I was in my kitchen drinking coffee from Sarah's favorite mug. The house felt too quiet since she passed. 43 years of marriage, and I still turned to tell her things before remembering she wasn't there. "My future's fine, sweetheart." "No, it's not. You're 69 years old, living alone in a house too big for one person, sitting on $5.2 million of land while collecting Social Security. It doesn't make sense." $5.2 million. Derek had done his homework. "I built this place with my own hands," I said. "Your mother and I raised you here. Every board, every nail, every foundation stone." "Dad, Mom's gone. I'm married now. You can't live in the past forever." "Live in the past," as if loving your wife and the home you built together was some kind of disease. "Derek has connections with Magnus Development Corporation," Victoria continued. "They're offering $6.8 million for your property. Cash deal, you could buy a nice condo in town, have money left over to travel, enjoy retirement. Magnus Development. I'd heard that name around town lately. Permits getting approved faster than usual. City council meetings where concerned citizens got 3 minutes to speak while developers got 30. I don't want to travel. I like my house. You like being stubborn. Derek says Magnus has big plans for this area. Casino development, entertainment district, thousands of jobs. You'd be helping the whole community. Casino development. That explained the pressure. Victoria, let me ask you something. When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up? What does that have to do with anything? Humor your old man, she sighed. I wanted to be a teacher. You know that. And why didn't you? Because teaching doesn't pay enough to live the life I wanted. The life you wanted? Or the life Derek wanted? Dad, I'm just trying to understand when my daughter decided money was worth more than everything else. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When she spoke again, her voice was ice. Derek's coming over tonight. 7 o'clock. We're going to discuss this properly. Nothing to discuss. Yes, there is. Because Derek's already drawn up preliminary contracts. Magnus is serious about this development. They've been buying up land in the area for 2 years. You're the last holdout. Last holdout. Like I was some kind of obstacle to progress, instead of a man who'd worked his whole life for what he had. Victoria, your mother and I scrimped and saved for 30 years to buy this land. We went without vacations, without new cars, without a lot of things so we could build something permanent, something to pass down. To who? I live in the city now. I don't want to be a farmer. You don't have to be a farmer, but you could understand why this land matters. I understand that $6.8 million matters more than sentimental attachment to dirt. Dirt. She called it dirt. That night, Derek arrived in his Porsche at exactly 7 o'clock. Punctual, professional, predatory. He wore a $1,000 suit and smiled like a shark. Julian, good to see you again. He shook my hand with the firm grip they teach in business school. I hope we can work something out that benefits everyone. We sat in my living room, the one where Victoria took her first steps, where Sarah read bedtime stories, where I'd planned to spend my final years. Derek spread contracts across my coffee table like he owned the place. Magnus Development has big plans for this area, he said. Entertainment complex, conference center, eventually a full casino resort. Economic impact studies show thousands of permanent jobs. Economic impact studies, I repeated. And what about environmental impact? Traffic impact? Impact on the families who've lived here for generations? Derek's smile never wavered. Progress requires sacrifice, Julian. But you'll be compensated more than fairly. $6.8 million is 30% above current market value. Because you need this specific parcel. Because Magnus recognizes the strategic importance of your property. His tone turned slightly cooler. This is a limited time offer. Development timelines don't wait for individual preferences. Victoria leaned forward. Dad, this is an incredible opportunity. Derek's family has connections throughout the county. Permits, zoning changes, municipal approvals, they can navigate all of it. Connections, permits, municipal approvals. The pieces were starting to fit together in ways I didn't like. I need time to think about it, I said. Derek's smile became razor thin. Of course, take the weekend, but understand, Magnus has other options if this property isn't available. They can build around it, cut off access roads, make life difficult for anyone who doesn't participate. After they left, I sat in my empty house thinking about threats disguised as business proposals, about daughters who saw their inheritance as more important than their father's dignity, about foundations and what happens when you build on shifting ground. Derek had made one mistake, though. He assumed I was just another old man who could be bullied into selling. The contracts were already drawn up, but Derek had no idea what was coming. Monday morning, I drove to Tom Richardson's law office. Tom had handled my business contracts for 20 years, helped me navigate every property purchase, every zoning issue, every legal maze that comes with building a construction company from scratch. Julian, he said, looking up from a stack of paperwork, what brings you here? Don't tell me you're finally ready to update that will of yours. Something like that. I handed him Derek's contracts. Take a look at these. Tom's reading glasses slipped down his nose as he studied the documents. After 5 minutes, he whistled low. Julian, this is serious money. 6.8 million for 40 acres? That's premium pricing even for prime development land. Too premium? Maybe. Magnus Development Corporation. I've seen this company name recently. They're filing permits all over the county. Building fast, spending big. He flipped through the pages. These contracts are aggressive. 30-day close, cash deal, waiver of inspection periods. Waiver of what? Environmental studies, geological surveys, municipal impact assessments. Normally, developers want to know what they're buying. Magnus just wants to buy it. What does that tell you? Tom leaned back in his chair. Either they're supremely confident, or they already know something we don't. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since Sarah died. I went to the county courthouse. Not for business this time, for research. The clerk, Margaret Kellaway, had been there since before computers. She knew every filing, every permit, every backroom deal in county government. Julian Moore, she said with a smile, haven't seen you since Sarah's estate paperwork. How are you holding up? Getting by. Margaret, I need to look up some corporate filings. Magnus Development Corporation. Magnus again? You're the third person this week asking about them. She pulled out a thick folder. Popular company lately. Who else was asking? Can't say specifically, but one was federal. Showed proper credentials. Federal. That word sat heavy in my chest. The Magnus files revealed a shell game. Delaware incorporation, limited liability structure, beneficial ownership buried behind layers of other companies. But one name kept appearing in the margins. Raymond Walsh, mayor's brother, listed as consulting advisor. Margaret, these permit approvals. They seem fast. 18 permits in 8 months, she said quietly. Normally takes that long for one major project. Who approves them? Planning Commission makes recommendations. City Council votes. But lately, she glanced around and lowered her voice. Lately, things get approved before public comment periods even close. That evening, I sat in my kitchen reviewing everything I'd learned. Magnus Development wanted my land badly enough to pay premium prices. They'd been buying up the area systematically. Their permits sailed through municipal approval with suspicious speed. The mayor's brother was involved, and someone federal was asking questions. I made 2 phone calls that night. First to Tom Richardson. Tom, I want to explore charitable donation options for my property. Charitable donation? Julian, you're talking about giving away $5.2 million. I'm talking about giving away my land to someone who will protect it. What kind of charity did you have in mind? Education. Maybe the school district. They're always complaining about budget cuts, overcrowded facilities. 40 acres could house a new high school, sports complex, whatever the community needs. Julian, are you sure about this? Victoria is your only heir. She won't be happy. Victoria made her feelings clear at her wedding. The second call was to Margaret Kellaway at home. Margaret, you mentioned someone federal asking about Magnus. Can you tell me anything else? A long pause. Julian, I probably shouldn't, but I like you. And I loved Sarah. That federal person left a business card in case anyone else had concerns about unusual permit activity. What kind of concerns? The kind that involved the FBI Public Corruption Unit. An FBI business card fell out of the Magnus file the next day. Agent Patricia Morse looked exactly like Central Casting would order for FBI. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, handshake that meant business. We met at a diner 20 miles outside town where nobody would recognize either of us. Mr. Moore, Margaret Kellaway said you had questions about Magnus Development. I have questions about why they want my land so badly they're offering 30% above market value. What else do you know about Magnus? Delaware Shell Company, permits approved faster than Christmas morning, mayor's brother on the payroll. I stirred sugar into coffee I didn't want. And now the FBI is asking questions. Agent Morse nodded slowly. We've been investigating municipal corruption in several counties. Magnus Development keeps appearing in our files. What kind of corruption? The kind where casino gambling permits get approved before applications are officially filed. The kind where environmental impact studies get waived for projects that should trigger federal oversight. The kind where property assessments mysteriously drop for developers' friends and rise for anyone who won't sell. My coffee went cold while she explained how corruption works in small towns. Not briefcases full of cash anymore, too obvious. Instead, consulting contracts for relatives, campaign contributions from shell companies, permits that should take months getting approved in days. Magnus has been assembling land for 2 years, Agent Morse continued. Your 40 acres completes their casino resort footprint. Without it, the whole project falls apart. Good. Mr. Moore, we'd like your help. What kind of help? The kind where you wear a wire and get Magnus representatives to discuss their municipal connections on tape. I thought about Victoria calling me embarrassing, about Derek's threats disguised as business opportunities, about Sarah, who always said the difference between right and wrong gets clearer as you get older, not hazier. What would that involve? Controlled meetings, FBI equipment, constitutional one-party consent recording, completely legal in this state. You'd be helping us build a federal case against a corruption ring that's been stealing from your community for years. And if they find out? These people destroy communities, Mr. Moore, but they're not violent criminals. They use lawyers and lobbyists, not enforcers. That afternoon, I drove to the school district offices. Superintendent Margaret Patterson had been fighting budget cuts for a decade, holding bake sales to buy textbooks, watching class sizes grow while resources shrank. Mr. Moore, what can I do for you? I want to donate 40 acres to the school district, she blinked. I'm sorry? 40 acres of land, valued at $5.2 million. For education, new high school, sports complex, whatever the community needs most. Mr. Moore, that's extraordinarily generous. But are you certain? That's a substantial gift. I'm certain. What would I need to do? Well, there are procedures, appraisals, environmental assessments, legal documentation. An irrevocable charitable trust would protect the donation from any future challenges. Irrevocable, meaning once done, it couldn't be undone, even by angry daughters or corrupt developers. How long would that take? With proper legal counsel, 2 weeks, maybe 3. Let's start tomorrow. That evening, Victoria called. Dad, Derek says Magnus is getting impatient. They need an answer by Friday. They'll have one. Good. I knew you'd come around. $6.8 million is life-changing money. It certainly is. Derek's already talking about investment opportunities, maybe a winter home in Florida. You could visit us, spend time with future grandchildren. Future grandchildren. The carrot after the stick. Victoria, can I ask you something? When Derek talks about these investment opportunities, does he ever mention exactly how Magnus got their permits approved so quickly? What kind of question is that? The kind a man asks when he's thinking about who to trust with his legacy. Dad, you're being paranoid. Derek's family has connections. That's how business works. It's not corruption, it's networking. And what's the difference? The difference is Derek's helping you get more money for your land than you ever dreamed of. The difference is I'm trying to help you have a comfortable retirement instead of rotting away in that house alone. Rotting away, like staying loyal to your dead wife's memory was some kind of disease. Victoria, I've made my decision about the land. Good. I'll tell Derek you're ready to sign. No, sweetheart. I'm ready to give it away. The silence on the phone stretched so long I wondered if she'd hung up. Give it away to who? The school district. 40 acres for a new high school sports complex, maybe a community center. Something permanent that helps kids instead of lining developers' pockets. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Tom Richardson is handling the paperwork. Irrevocable charitable trust. Fully legal. Completely permanent. Dad, you can't give away my inheritance. Your inheritance, Victoria. I thought this was about helping me have a comfortable retirement. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. And that's exactly why I'm giving it away. Victoria's lawyer was already calling the next morning. Mr. Moore, this is David Castellanos, legal counsel for Victoria Moore Bennett. I understand you're planning some unusual financial arrangements. Victoria had lawyered up overnight. Corporate attorney, downtown firm, hourly rate that probably exceeded my monthly pension. Nothing unusual about donating to education, I said. A $5.2 million donation raises certain questions about mental capacity, undue influence, financial exploitation of elderly persons. Elderly persons, like I was some confused old man who couldn't manage his own affairs. Mr. Castellanos, I built a successful construction business for 40 years, paid taxes on time, never bounced a check, maintained perfect credit. What part of that suggests mental incapacity? Giving away generational wealth despite your only daughter suggests questionable judgment at minimum. Giving away generational wealth to prevent corrupt developers from destroying my community suggests exactly the opposite. I hung up and called Tom Richardson. Julian, Victoria's lawyer, contacted me this morning. They're threatening to file for emergency conservatorship, claiming you're mentally incompetent to make financial decisions. On what grounds? They're claiming the donation's evidence of impaired judgment, that someone may be manipulating you into giving away Victoria's rightful inheritance. Can they do that? They can try, but conservatorship requires proof of mental incapacity. Your construction business records, tax filings, property management history all demonstrate clear competence. Plus, charitable donations aren't evidence of incompetence. They're evidence of personal values. How fast can we complete the donation? With expedited processing, 1 week, maybe 10 days. Do it. Wednesday afternoon, Derek arrived unannounced. No Porsche this time. A black Mercedes SUV with tinted windows. He brought backup. 2 men in expensive suits who looked like they'd never worked with their hands a day in their lives. Julian, we need to talk. And about what? About the serious mistake you're making. Derek's smile was gone. Magnus Development has invested significant resources in this project. They've assembled the surrounding properties, obtained preliminary permits, made commitments to investors. Sounds like their problem? It becomes your problem when you interfere with a legitimate business enterprise. The 2 men flanked Derek like bookends, silent, watching, measuring. Derek, are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. This casino project is happening with or without your cooperation. Magnus has other options. They can build around your property, cut off access roads, make life very difficult for anyone who doesn't participate in community progress. Community progress? Is that what we're calling corruption now? Derek's face darkened. You need to be very careful about making accusations you can't prove. I'm not making accusations. I'm stating facts. Magnus Development is a Delaware shell company with murky ownership. Your permits got approved faster than building permits for garden sheds. The mayor's brother, Raymond Walsh, is collecting consulting fees from companies that don't exist. You've been busy. I've been paying attention. One of Derek's companions spoke for the first time. Mr. Moore, you should understand that certain business arrangements have already been finalized, contracts signed, money committed, legal obligations created. Disrupting those arrangements could have serious consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that involve federal regulations, tax investigations, environmental compliance issues. Amazing how many problems can surface when someone isn't cooperative. They were threatening me with the same government agencies that were already investigating them. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so arrogant. Gentlemen, I think we're done here. Derek stood up slowly. Julian, think carefully about what you're doing. Victoria is your only family. Don't destroy that relationship over misguided principles. My principles aren't misguided. Your business model is. After they left, I called Agent Morse. They just threatened me, I said. Direct threats? Wrapped in business language, but clear enough. They mentioned federal investigations, tax problems, environmental issues, basically every agency that could make my life difficult. Did you record the conversation? No, but I can arrange for that next time. There's going to be a next time? I'm going to call Derek tomorrow. Tell him I want to negotiate. Set up a meeting where we can discuss the sale properly. Mr. Moore, that could be dangerous. Agent Morse, these people think I'm a stubborn old man they can bully into submission. They have no idea what they're actually dealing with. Thursday morning, I made the call. Derek, it's Julian Moore. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. I'm glad you're being reasonable. Maybe we can work something out. But I need to understand the full scope of Magnus's plans. If I'm selling my family land, I want to know exactly what's happening to it. Of course, that's completely understandable. Can we meet tomorrow, somewhere private, where we can discuss details without interruption? Absolutely. My office, 2 o'clock? Perfect. Agent Morse met me that evening to explain the FBI recording equipment. Smaller than a pack of cigarettes, completely undetectable, broadcast quality audio that would hold up in federal court. Mr. Moore, once you're wearing this device, you become a federal informant in an active investigation. Are you prepared for that responsibility? I thought about Sarah, who always said doing right isn't the same as doing easy. About Victoria, who'd chosen money over family. About my community, being carved up by criminals who wore suits instead of masks. I've been preparing for it my whole life. Then tomorrow we find out exactly how deep this corruption goes. Derek had no idea what was coming. Derek's office occupied half the top floor of the Bennett building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows, imported marble, furniture that cost more than most people's cars. The FBI wire felt warm against my chest, a small reminder that every word was being recorded for posterity. Julian, I'm glad you came to your senses. Derek gestured to a leather chair across from his mahogany desk. Victoria was worried you'd do something irreversible out of spite. I don't act out of spite. I act out of principle. Sometimes principle is a luxury working people can't afford. Working people? Like I hadn't worked construction sites for 40 years while Derek inherited his father's law practice. Let's talk about Magnus development, I said. If I'm selling my land, I want to understand who I'm really dealing with. Derek leaned back, confident now that he thought he'd won. Magnus is a sophisticated development corporation with interests across the Southeast. Casino resorts, entertainment complexes, integrated luxury communities. Who owns it? Consortium of investors, private equity, pension funds, some international capital. Any local investors? Derek paused. What kind of question is that? The kind a man asks when he's selling family land to strangers. There may be some local involvement, silent partners, consulting arrangements. Like Raymond Walsh? Derek's confidence flickered. Where did you hear that name? County Courthouse. Public records. Raymond Walsh, mayor's brother, listed as consulting advisor to Magnus Development. Same Raymond Walsh who sits on the Municipal Planning Commission that approved 18 Magnus permits in 8 months. Julian, you're making connections that don't exist. Am I? Because from where I sit, it looks like Magnus bought themselves a municipal government. Derek stood up and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Classic power move, meant to intimidate. Julian, let me explain how business works in the real world. Companies hire local consultants who understand regional markets, regulatory environments, community concerns. It's not corruption. It's smart business. And what does Magnus pay for this smart business advice? Consulting fees commensurate with the value provided. How much? That's confidential. Everything's confidential with you people. Derek turned around, smile gone. Careful, Julian. You're starting to sound like one of those conspiracy theorists who see corruption everywhere. I see corruption where corruption exists. Permits approved before applications are filed. Environmental studies waived for projects that should trigger federal oversight. Property assessments that mysteriously favor Magnus Associates. You've been busy researching. I've been busy caring about my community. Derek walked back to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a thick folder. Julian, let me show you what Magnus is really offering. He spread architectural plans across his desk. Casino resort, conference center, luxury hotel, shopping complex, hundreds of millions in construction, thousands of jobs, millions in tax revenue. This project will transform the entire region, Derek said. Economic impact studies show sustained growth for decades. Economic impact studies paid for by Magnus Development. Prepared by independent consulting firms. Which independent consulting firms? Regional Economic Solutions, Municipal Growth Partners, Community Development Associates. I recognize those names from the courthouse research. All 3 companies incorporated within 6 months of each other, all listing the same Delaware address, all receiving substantial contracts from Magnus Development. Derek, these aren't independent firms. They're Magnus shell companies. You're paranoid. I'm informed. There's a difference. Derek's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. Julian, I need to take this call, but think about what I've shown you. This project is bigger than your personal feelings about development. It's about community prosperity. He stepped into an adjoining conference room, leaving his phone on speaker by mistake. Derek, it's Raymond, and we have a problem. Some old man's been asking questions at the courthouse about Magnus permits. It's under control. No, it's not. Margaret Kellaway says someone federal was reviewing our files. FBI, Derek, Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's impossible. Our arrangement guarantees permit approval. Our arrangement guarantees municipal approval. It doesn't guarantee federal agencies won't investigate municipal approval processes. Derek noticed his phone was on speaker and quickly switched it off. But I'd heard enough. Raymond Walsh, mayor's brother, discussing arrangements that guarantee permit approval, federal investigation, Magnus corruption reaching into municipal government. Derek returned looking less confident. Julian, I think we should accelerate this transaction. Magnus is prepared to close immediately, cash deal, no contingencies. How immediately? This week. Tomorrow, if possible. Why the rush? Market conditions, interest rates, development schedules don't wait for individual preferences or federal investigations. Derek went very still. What did you say? I said federal investigations don't wait for individual preferences either. Julian, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Magnus Development is a criminal enterprise using municipal corruption to fast-track casino permits. You're collecting kickbacks through consulting contracts. Your father-in-law, Raymond Walsh, is trading permit approvals for campaign contributions and family business. You need to be very careful about making accusations you can't prove. I'm not making accusations. I'm stating facts that federal investigators are already documenting. Derek's phone rang again. This time he checked the caller ID before answering. Yes? What? When? How many agents? I'll call you back. He hung up, face pale. Julian, I think our meeting is over. Why? What happened? Nothing that concerns you. But something clearly concerned Derek. His hands shook as he gathered the architectural plans, knocked over a coffee mug, fumbled with file folders like a man whose world was collapsing. Derek, one more question. Well, what happens to Magnus Development if they can't get my 40 acres? They find alternative arrangements. Like what? Like whatever it takes to complete this project. Derek had just confessed to conspiracy, bribery, and willingness to do whatever it takes to complete a criminal enterprise. All on FBI recording equipment. Derek's lawyer was calling before I reached my truck. Mr. Moore, this is Richard Bennett, Derek's father. I understand there's been some confusion about your property transaction. Richard Bennett, senior partner at Bennett and Associates, former city attorney, man who'd built a legal empire on municipal connections spanning 3 decades. No confusion. I'm not selling to Magnus Development. Mr. Moore, you need to understand the broader implications of that decision. Magnus has invested substantial resources in this development project. They have legal obligations to investors, contractual commitments to suppliers, employment agreements with hundreds of future workers. Their legal problems aren't my responsibility. Actually, they might be. Tortious interference with contractual relations, conspiracy to defraud investors, malicious disruption of legitimate business enterprises. These are serious legal theories that could result in substantial personal liability. Another threat, this time from Derek's lawyer father, dressed up in legal language but clear as daylight. Mr. Bennett, are you threatening to sue me for refusing to sell my own property? I'm explaining potential consequences of actions that damage legitimate business interests. And I'm explaining that I don't give a damn. That afternoon, Agent Morse called with disturbing news. Mr. Moore, we intercepted communications suggesting Magnus is exploring alternative approaches to your property situation. What kind of alternative approaches? The kind involving eminent domain proceedings, environmental violations, tax assessment challenges, municipal code enforcement actions. They're going to try to steal my land through government agencies? They're going to try to make keeping your land so expensive and legally complicated that you'll sell just to stop the harassment. Can they do that? If they have sufficient municipal cooperation, yes. Corrupt local officials can make any property owner's life miserable through selective enforcement of regulations that normally get ignored. I thought about Raymond Walsh, mayor's brother controlling permit approvals and city council votes, about Derek's family law practice representing half the municipal employees in the county, about corruption networks that operated through favors and threats instead of briefcases full of cash. What do you recommend? Complete your charitable donation as quickly as possible. Once the school district owns your land, it becomes much harder for Magnus to manipulate government agencies. School districts have their own legal protections, federal oversight, public accountability. How much time do I have? Based on intercepted communications, maybe days. That evening, Victoria showed up at my door with Derek and two men I didn't recognize. Official-looking men with clipboards and measuring devices and the kind of authority that comes from government badges. Dad, these are county inspectors. They need to examine your property for potential code violations. What kind of code violations? One inspector, a thin man with bureaucratic eyes, consulted his clipboard. Septic system compliance, well water contamination, electrical safety, structural integrity, fire safety compliance, zoning violations. Zoning violations? I've lived here for 30 years. Zoning classifications can change, Mr. Moore. Property usage that was legal yesterday might not be legal today. Derek stepped forward. Julian, this is exactly what I tried to warn you about. When you're not cooperative with development projects, municipal agencies start paying closer attention to irregularities. What irregularities? Your workshop behind the house. Is it properly permitted? Your gravel driveway. Does it meet current runoff regulations? Your property line fence. Is it precisely on the surveyed boundary? They were going to nickel and dime me into submission. Find violations that existed on half the properties in the county, but only enforce them against the one man who wouldn't cooperate with their casino scheme. Gentlemen, I need to make some phone calls. After they left, I called Tom Richardson. Julian, they can't just manufacture code violations. They don't need to manufacture them. Every property in America probably violates some municipal code that nobody enforces until they want to enforce it. What do you want to do? Complete the charitable donation tonight. Tonight? Julian, these things take time. Paperwork, notarization, filing requirements. Tom, how long would it take if we had unlimited resources and emergency processing? With the right pressure, maybe tomorrow morning, but that would require calling in serious favors. Call them. I hung up and dialed Agent Morse. Agent Morse, they just sent county inspectors to find code violations on my property. Derek basically admitted it's retaliation for not cooperating with Magnus Development. Mr. Moore, we recorded that conversation. Derek's statement about municipal agencies paying closer attention when people aren't cooperative with development projects. That's evidence of conspiracy to abuse government authority. What happens now? Now we accelerate our timeline. How soon can you complete your property donation? Tomorrow morning, if everything goes right. Then tomorrow morning, Magnus Development learns what happens when they threaten federal informants. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of worry, because of anticipation. For 40 years, I'd built foundations designed to last. Tomorrow, I'd find out if the foundation of American justice was strong enough to support an old contractor taking on municipal corruption. At 3 a.m, my phone rang. Dad, it's Victoria. We need to talk. It's 3 a.m. I know what time it is. Derek's been arrested. My blood went cold. Arrested for what? Federal agents came to our house 2 hours ago. Conspiracy, bribery, racketeering, wire fraud. Dad, what did you do? I didn't do anything. Derek did it to himself. The FBI agents said they have recordings, conversations, meetings, phone calls. They know about Magnus Development, about Raymond Walsh, about permit approvals. Good. Good? Dad, Derek could go to prison. Our lives are destroyed. The wedding, the house, everything we planned. It's all gone. Victoria, Derek was stealing from the community we live in. He was bribing officials, manipulating permits, defrauding investors. Did you think that was going to end well? I thought you were just being stubborn about selling land. I was protecting our community from criminals who wear expensive suits. Dad, please. Can't you fix this somehow? Talk to the FBI, tell them Derek was just doing business normally. Victoria, I can't fix this because I didn't break it. Derek broke it when he chose crime over honest work. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I'll never forgive you for this, she whispered. That's your choice, sweetheart. But 20 years from now, when you're explaining to your children why their father went to prison, remember, he had every opportunity to do the right thing. She hung up without saying goodbye. At 6 a.m., Tom Richardson called with news that would change everything. Julian, the donation paperwork is ready. Margaret Kellaway from the school district is meeting us at the courthouse when it opens at 8 a.m. Any problems? None. Clean title, environmental assessments completed, appraisal confirmed at $5.2 million. The school district is getting 40 acres free and clear. At 7:45, I stood on the courthouse steps with Tom Richardson, Margaret Kellaway, and Agent Patricia Morse. The FBI agent held a small electronic device, recording equipment for what she called the final phase of our investigation. Mr. Moore, Magnus Development doesn't know about your donation yet. We're hoping they'll make one last attempt to pressure you, and when they do, you'll have them on tape attempting to interfere with a completed legal transaction. Exactly. At exactly 8 o'clock, Derek's father, Richard Bennett, arrived with two men in dark suits. Not FBI, private security, the kind that follows corporate lawyers when they're delivering ultimatums. Mr. Moore, I have a court injunction preventing transfer of your property pending resolution of municipal code violations. Tom Richardson examined the paperwork. This injunction was signed by Judge Crawford at 7:30 this morning. Emergency session. Judge Crawford, I said. Would that be the same Judge Crawford whose campaign was funded by Bennett and Associates? Richard Bennett's jaw tightened. Careful, Moore. Accusations of judicial corruption are serious matters. So is actual judicial corruption? Agent Morse stepped forward. Mr. Bennett, I'm FBI Agent Patricia Morse. This property transfer was completed at 8 a.m. when the courthouse opened. Your injunction is attempting to reverse a legal transaction that's already been recorded. Agent Morse, that's impossible. Emergency injunctions can prevent illegal transfers of property. This wasn't an illegal transfer. This was a charitable donation to a school district, fully documented, completely legal. Richard Bennett's confidence cracked. I need to make a phone call. He walked to his car, pulled out his phone, spoke urgently for 5 minutes. Agent Morse's recording equipment captured every word. Raymond, it's Richard Bennett. We have a problem. The old man already transferred the property to the school district. Yes, this morning. No, the injunction was too late. We need to explore other options. What other options? Came the voice from the phone. Eminent domain. Municipal seizure for public use. We can force the school district to sell to Magnus for fair market value. That's not going to work, Richard. FBI agents were just at City Hall asking questions about permit approvals. What kind of questions? The kind that come with federal search warrants. Richard Bennett noticed Agent Morse approaching and quickly ended the call. Mr. Bennett, she said, that phone conversation was very interesting. I don't know what you mean. The part where you discussed using eminent domain to force a school district to sell property to Magnus Development. The part where you mentioned municipal seizure for public use when the actual use would be private casino development. The part where you coordinated with Raymond Walsh to manipulate government agencies. Richard Bennett looked at his phone, then at Agent Morse, then at me. Mr. Moore, you have no idea what you've done. I've donated property to educate children instead of letting criminals steal it for casino profits. You've destroyed a legitimate development project that would have brought prosperity to this entire region. I've exposed a criminal enterprise that was stealing from this entire region. One of Richard Bennett's security men whispered something in his ear. Richard's face went pale. Gentlemen, I think we need to leave. Actually, Agent Morse said, I think you need to stay. 3 FBI vehicles pulled into the courthouse parking lot. 6 federal agents emerged, led by a tall man with prosecutor written all over his face. Richard Bennett, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit bribery, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and violation of federal racketeering statutes. As they handcuffed Derek's father, he looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Moore. Yes, it is. Margaret Kellaway from the school district had watched the entire confrontation with wide eyes. Mr. Moore, I had no idea your property donation was part of an FBI investigation. Neither did I until recently. What happens now? Agent Morse answered. Now 40 acres belongs to the school district. Magnus Development loses their casino site, and a corruption ring goes to federal prison. The wire recording captured more than we expected. By noon, the arrests had spread across the county like wildfire. Raymond Walsh, mayor's brother, taken into custody at City Hall. Judge Crawford, whose emergency injunction had attempted to block my donation, arrested at his private club. 3 city council members, 2 planning commissioners, and a county supervisor, all part of the Magnus Development conspiracy. Agent Morse found me at home, reviewing the school district donation papers that had triggered the largest municipal corruption bust in county history. Mr. Moore, the recordings from this morning led to something bigger than we expected. How much bigger? Racketeering conspiracy spanning 3 counties, 12 municipal officials, and approximately $20 million in fraudulent casino development contracts. $20 million. I'd thought this was about my 40 acres. Instead, it was about systematic theft from entire communities. The wire recording of Derek's confession was the key, Agent Morse continued, but this morning's conversation between Richard Bennett and Raymond Walsh filled in the complete picture. What kind of picture? Magnus Development was never a legitimate casino company. They were a front operation for out-of-state investors who wanted to buy municipal governments wholesale. Casino development was just the cover story. Cover story for what? Money laundering through municipal construction contracts. They'd win rigged bids for public works projects, inflate costs, kickback portions to municipal officials, and launder the profits through casino development. My head spun trying to process the scope of the conspiracy. How long had this been going on? Based on financial records seized this morning, at least 3 years. Magnus has similar operations in 4 other states. And if I'd sold my land? The casino project would have provided cover for hundreds of millions in money laundering. Your 40 acres was the final piece that made the entire scheme viable. That afternoon, Victoria called. Dad, Derek's been indicted on 14 federal charges. I heard. His father's been arrested too. The entire Bennett law firm is under investigation. Our wedding venue canceled our reception hall rental. Derek's lost his real estate license. Victoria, don't. Just don't. I know what you're going to say. That Derek chose this. That crime doesn't pay. That justice prevailed. But you destroyed our lives. Derek destroyed your life when he chose to become a criminal. He was just doing business. He was stealing from our community and calling it business. Dad, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending you're the same man who raised me. I'm exactly the same man who raised you. I taught you right from wrong, honest work from theft. Community service from personal greed. If you can't recognize that anymore, maybe the problem isn't who I've become. Maybe it isn't. She hung up. This time it felt permanent. That evening, local news covered the arrests as the lead story. Channel 8 reporters standing outside the courthouse explaining how an elderly contractor's property donation had exposed the largest municipal corruption ring in state history. Julian Moore, age 69, donated 40 acres valued at $5.2 million to the county school district rather than sell to Magnus Development Corporation. That decision triggered an FBI investigation that revealed systematic bribery, permit fraud, and money laundering involving dozens of local officials. The news story made me sound like some kind of hero. Truth was simpler. I just refused to let criminals steal what my wife and I had built together. My phone rang constantly. Other news stations wanting interviews, FBI agents requesting additional statements, neighbors calling to say thank you, Tom Richardson calling to discuss legal procedures, Margaret Kellaway from the school district calling to discuss construction plans for the new high school, but not Victoria. 3 days later, Derek appeared on the courthouse steps with his new lawyer, not his father, who was facing his own federal charges. Derek read a prepared statement to the media. I deeply regret my involvement in activities that violated federal law and betrayed the trust of this community. I accept full responsibility for my actions and will cooperate completely with federal investigators. Cooperation. That usually meant testimony against co-conspirators in exchange for reduced sentences. Agent Morse called that afternoon with an update. Derek Bennett has agreed to testify against Magnus Development investors and municipal co-conspirators. His cooperation could reduce his sentence from 20 years to 8 years federal prison. And Raymond Walsh? Still claiming innocence despite recorded confessions. He'll probably get the full 20 years. What happens to the casino project now? Dead completely. Magnus Development assets are frozen pending civil forfeiture proceedings. The investors, turns out they were connected to organized crime families in 3 states. Organized crime. I'd thought this was about local corruption, small-town greed, developers cutting corners for profit. Instead, I'd stumbled into a federal conspiracy involving money laundering and racketeering. Agent Morse, how did you know to investigate Magnus Development? We didn't. We were investigating municipal corruption in the next county over when Magnus's name kept appearing in financial records. Your phone call to Margaret Kellaway was the break we needed. My phone call? When you asked about unusual permit activity, Margaret contacted us. When you agreed to wear a wire, you became the key witness who brought down a multi-state criminal organization. Victoria's scream echoed through my memory as her husband was led away in handcuffs. 6 months later, I stood with Margaret Kellaway and 300 community members at the groundbreaking ceremony for Julian Moore Community High School. They'd insisted on naming it after me, despite my objections that Sarah should share the credit. Mr. Moore, Margaret said to the gathered crowd, your gift to our children represents more than generous philanthropy. It represents a community's victory over corruption. A citizen's courage to do right when doing wrong would have been profitable. The crowd applauded. I looked out at faces I'd known for decades. Neighbors, former customers, fellow church members, people whose kids would attend this school. People whose community had been saved from systematic theft, disguised as economic development. Derek Bennett had been sentenced to 8 years federal prison after his cooperation helped convict 17 other conspirators. His father Richard got 15 years for racketeering conspiracy. Raymond Walsh got 20 years for bribery and money laundering. Victoria hadn't spoken to me since Derek's sentencing, but standing there watching children play on land that would soon house their new school, I realized some victories cost more than defeat, and some foundations are worth any sacrifice. After the ceremony, I drove to Sarah's grave at Hillside Cemetery. 43 years of marriage, 4 years of widowhood, 1 year of fighting corruption that threatened everything we'd built together. We did it, sweetheart, I told her headstone. The land's safe. The kids will have their school. The criminals are in prison where they belong. I traced her name carved in granite, remembering how she'd always said the measure of a man isn't what he builds for himself, but what he leaves behind for others. 40 acres for education instead of exploitation, a community high school instead of a money laundering casino, children learning about integrity instead of growing up surrounded by corruption. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Dad saw the groundbreaking ceremony on the news. The school looks beautiful. I'm proud of what you did, even though I couldn't see it at the time. Maybe we could talk sometime. Victoria. Maybe we could, but not today. Today was for remembering Sarah, for celebrating the community we'd protected together, for watching children play on land that would nurture their futures, instead of financing criminal enterprises. The setting sun cast long shadows across the cemetery, painting everything golden like the harvest fields Sarah and I used to walk when we were young, and building our life together, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, principle by principle. Some foundations are built to last centuries. Others are built to last forever. I drove home past the construction site where Julian Moore Community High School would rise from the 40 acres Sarah and I had assembled over 30 years of marriage. Past the empty lot where Magnus Development's casino would never poison our community. Past neighbors' homes that would remain neighbors' homes instead of becoming casualties of eminent domain abuse. At my kitchen table, I poured coffee into Sarah's favorite mug and opened Tom Richardson's letter explaining the final legal settlement. Magnus Development's frozen assets, nearly $50 million, would be distributed to communities damaged by their corruption schemes. Our county would receive $12 million for infrastructure improvements, education funding, and municipal reform programs. $12 million for our community, generated by one old contractor's refusal to let criminals steal what honest people had built. Sometimes the best inheritance isn't money. Sometimes it's the knowledge that you stood up when standing up mattered, that you protected what needed protecting, that you left the world a little more honest than you found it. Sometimes protection looks like abandonment, but sometimes protection is the truest form of love. 2 years have passed since the groundbreaking ceremony. Julian Moore Community High School opened last fall with 800 students, a state-of-the-art science complex, and athletic facilities that host regional championships. I volunteer there twice a week, teaching basic construction skills to students who want to learn trades, honest work with their hands, building things that last. Victoria visits occasionally. Brief conversations, careful politeness, the relationship of strangers who happen to share DNA. Derek's prison letters go unanswered. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt with good intentions. But the school thrives. Students graduate to colleges and careers, carrying with them the knowledge that their community chose integrity over profit, education over exploitation, children's futures over criminal greed. Margaret Kellaway retired last year, but not before ensuring that Julian Moore Community High School would serve as a permanent reminder that ordinary citizens can defeat extraordinary corruption when they refuse to be intimidated. I still live in the house Sarah and I built together, but now I can see the school's lights from my kitchen window. Every evening, watching students practice on fields we made possible, I'm reminded why some fights are worth having. The FBI's investigation expanded to 6 states, resulting in over 100 arrests and the recovery of nearly $200 million in stolen community funds. Agent Patricia Morse received a federal commendation for her work exposing the Magnus Development conspiracy. My construction business remains officially retired, but I've never been busier. Building playground equipment for the school, teaching kids about foundations that last, showing them that honest work creates honest wealth. Sometimes young people ask me if I regret giving away $5.2 million. I tell them I didn't give away $5.2 million. I invested $5.2 million in the most profitable enterprise possible, the future of children who will grow up in a community that chose principles over profit. That's a return no casino could ever match. If you believe in foundations that last forever, subscribe and share this story. Tell me in the comments what you'd have built on 40 acres if crooked developers came calling. Because somewhere in your community, someone's probably trying to steal what honest people built. And sometimes an old contractor's blueprint for fighting corruption is exactly what they need. Some foundations can't be moved, some principles can't be bought, some communities can't be stolen, and sometimes the best way to build a legacy is to give it away.